Have you ever asked yourself, why are diamonds so expensive? You probably think they're rare, precious, finite, that the Earth takes billions of years to produce them under impossible heat and pressure, and only a handful ever make it to the surface. Right? It sounds logical, sounds like science, it sounds, most importantly, like the truth. But what if I told you they aren't particularly rare? What if the Earth is actually full of them? In fact, they are far more common than rubies, emeralds, or sapphires, yet they cost more. But why? How? It's the most sought-after gem, the symbol of forever love. What if all that scarcity, the mythology, the forever, was invented, engineered, and sold to the world by a single company? This is the story of how one corporation pulled off the greatest long con in the history of capitalism. It began, as so many world-altering events do, with an accident. In 1867, on the banks of the Orange River in what is now South Africa, a young boy named Erasmus Jacobs was playing near his family farm when he spotted a shiny stone in the dirt. He thought nothing of it. He picked it up and gave it to his sister as a plaything. A local farmer named Schock van Niekerk recognized it for what it was, a diamond, later named the Eureka Diamond, and purchased it for a handful of livestock. That single transaction ignited one of the greatest gold rush equivalents in history. Tens of thousands of fortune seekers flooded into the barren landscapes of Griqualand West. In 1871, the area around the town of Kimberley erupted into what became the single richest diamond deposit ever discovered on Earth. But before the world-famous mines had a name, there was a farm. Two Afrikaner settler brothers, Diederik Arnoldus DeBeers and Johannes Nicholas DeBeers, owned a modest piece of land they called Vooruitzicht. When diamonds were discovered beneath their soil and the demands of the British colonial government became impossible to resist, the brothers were forced to sell their farm for just £6,600. It was a transaction they likely regretted for the rest of their lives. For Vooruitzicht would become the site of the legendary Big Hole and the DeBeers mine, two of the most productive diamond operations in history. The brothers' name would eventually travel across the entire world. The hill being excavated became known simply as the Big Hole, an open-cast mine so enormous it could swallow a city block whole, and so deep it seemed to have no bottom. Where there was chaos, there was opportunity. Hundreds of small claims were staked. Thousands of independent miners competed furiously. Water flooded the shafts. Rock fell. Market was a mess. And the price of diamonds, flooded by oversupply, started to fall. The world had its diamonds. What it needed now was someone to control them. And one supremely ambitious young Englishman was watching very, very carefully. In 1870, Cecil John Rhodes arrived in South Africa at the age of 16. Not for diamonds, but for his health. His family sent him there hoping the warm, dry climate might ease his chronically weak lungs. He found diamonds instead. Like all smart businessmen during the gold rush, instead of digging he started renting water pumps to miners during the diamond rush that began in 1869. He invested those early profits into buying up the claims of small mining operators, slowly building a separate mining company from scratch. He realized the biggest problem in the Kimberley fields was fragmentation. Too many owners, too much competition, collapsing prices. Rhodes began a methodical, relentless campaign to buy out every single competitor. His greatest stroke of strategic genius was securing backing from the powerful Rothschild family, who financed his business expansion. Armed with Rothschild capital, Rhodes began to systematically buy out and consolidate diamond mines across the Kimberley fields. His most formidable rival was Barney Barnado, a London-born entrepreneur who had built his own substantial diamond empire. 4 years the two men competed head-to-head until 1888, when Rhodes finally outmaneuvered Barnado and merged their operations. DeBeers Consolidated Mines was formed that year from the combination of their companies, and by the time the ink was dry, the new entity was the sole owner of virtually all diamond mining operations in South Africa. In 1889, Rhodes negotiated a pivotal strategic agreement with the London-based Diamond Syndicate, which agreed to purchase a fixed quantity of diamonds at an agreed price, thereby regulating output and maintaining prices. The agreement proved immediately successful. During the trade slump of 1891 to 1892, Supply was deliberately curtailed to keep prices stable. When Rhodes died in 1902, DeBeers controlled 90% of the world's diamond production. But the monopoly was not yet complete. In 1898, diamonds were discovered on farms near Pretoria in the Transvaal, leading to the establishment of the premier mine. Its owner, Thomas Cullinan, refused to join the DeBeers cartel. Instead, the mine began selling to a pair of independent dealers named Bernard and Ernest Oppenheimer, thereby weakening DeBeers' stranglehold. It was a dangerous breach, but a temporary one. During World War I, the premier mine was finally absorbed into DeBeers, and the Oppenheimer name would become inseparable from the empire itself. When Cecil Rhodes died in 1902, he left behind a massive fortune, but a messy empire. It needed a new architect, someone colder, more calculating. To found him in Ernest Oppenheimer. Rhodes wanted to own the land. Oppenheimer wanted to own the very concept. In 1910, he uttered the words that would haunt the jewelry industry for a century. Common sense tells us that the only way to increase the value of diamonds is to make them scarce. That is, to reduce production. It wasn't just cynical. It was a declaration of war against the free market. By 1929, Oppenheimer had built the Central Selling Organization, CSO, in London, the most airtight monopoly the world had ever seen. The distribution worked through a bizarre, high-stakes ritual. DeBeers handpicked 125 elite dealers, known as sight holders. 10 times a year, these dealers were summoned to London. They were handed a box. Inside was a pile of rough diamonds. The catch? You couldn't negotiate. You couldn't pick and choose. You couldn't say, "I'd like more of the clear ones." The choice: you bought the whole box at the price DeBeers set, or you walked away with nothing. But if you walked away too often, you were blacklisted. And in a world where DeBeers controlled the supply, being blacklisted didn't just mean losing a deal. It meant your business was dead. There was no other market. The submit or starve protocol. Under Ernest and later his son Harry, DeBeers operated like a corporate deity. They had 4 ways to ensure nobody ever challenged them. The golden cage. They'd offer independent mines exclusivity agreements. We buy everything you dig up, we handle the marketing, and you get a steady check. Most took the deal. The assassination. If a mine refused to join, DeBeers went for the throat. They would identify the specific type of diamond that mine produced and flood the market with their own stockpiles of that exact stone. They would drive the price so low that the independent mine would go bankrupt. The world sponge. DeBeers acted as a global hoarder. If a new source of diamonds was found, like the massive Soviet finds in Siberia in the 1950s, DeBeers didn't fight them. They bought them. They absorbed the Soviets into the CSO. The price held. The price floor. If the global economy dipped and prices fell, DeBeers didn't lower their prices. They did the opposite. They went on a buying spree, vacuuming up every stray diamond on Earth and locking them in vaults to force supply back down. By the 1980s, the Oppenheimer family had achieved God mode. They controlled 90% of the world's rough diamonds. They weren't just a South African mining company anymore. They were a planet-wide system of control. From the frozen wastes of Siberia to the deserts of Namibia, every diamond on Earth had to pass through one building in London. But there was one problem. They had successfully controlled the supply. Now they had to figure out how to brainwash the world into never-ending demand. By 1938, DeBeers was facing an existential crisis. The Great Depression had crushed the global economy, and the elite were no longer buying. But more importantly, the world had a logic problem. Most people didn't see the point in spending a fortune on a rock. Engagement rings were pearls, sapphires, or simple gold bands. Diamonds were for the ultra-wealthy, not the masses. DeBeers didn't just need customers. They needed to rewrite human tradition. They hired the Philadelphia ad agency N.W. Ayer and Son with a singular, chilling mission: make the diamond indispensable. N.W. Ayer didn't run traditional ads. They conducted a psychological operation. They pressured Hollywood studios to put diamonds on the fingers of leading ladies in every romantic climax. They fed society news to newspapers, featuring debutantes flashing their new stones. They turned the diamond into a public scoreboard for a man's success and a woman's worth. Then, in 1947, a copywriter named Francis Geraghty, working late and exhausted, scrawled 4 words on a notepad that would become the most successful lie in history.
A diamond is forever.
Those 4 words weren't just a slogan. They were a lock and key. They accomplished 2 things that were nothing short of brilliant. They linked a chunk of carbon to the concept of eternal love. If your love was forever, the stone had to be too. The secondary market kill switch. This is the real long con. If a diamond is forever, you can never sell it. Selling an engagement ring became socially taboo, a sign of heartbreak or failure. By making diamonds unsellable, DeBeers ensured that every diamond ever sold stayed in a jewelry box and out of the market. They never had to compete with their own past sales because they had brainwashed the world into hoarding them. When the American market was saturated, DeBeers turned to Japan. In the 1960s, Japan had almost zero tradition of diamond engagement rings. DeBeers didn't care. They ran a massive campaign suggesting that a diamond was the mark of a modern, westernized marriage. In just 20 years, Japan went from 0% to the second largest diamond market on Earth. They didn't just sell a product, they installed a new ritual into the DNA of an entire civilization. For all its marketing brilliance, the DeBeers empire wasn't built on romance. It was built on a foundation of exploitation, conflict, and a blatant disregard for international law. If the marketing was a dream, the reality was a nightmare. DeBeers didn't just exist during apartheid. It helped provide the blueprint for it. The company's massive profits were fueled by a migrant labor system that treated human beings like disposable machinery. Black African workers were forced into closed compounds, prison-like dormitories surrounded by barbed wire. They were separated from their families for months at a time. To protect the scarcity of the stones, every worker was subjected to intrusive, humiliating daily strip searches and often x-rays to ensure not a single pebble left the site. In the mid-20th century, white miners often earned 15 to 20 times more than their black counterparts. While Harry Oppenheimer eventually became a vocal critic of apartheid, the fact remains, DeBeers was the single most powerful economic engine of the regime for decades. In the 1990s, the forever mythology collided with the brutal reality of African civil wars. In countries like Sierra Leone, Angola, and the DRC, diamonds became the currency of warlords. These conflict diamonds funded rebel militias that committed horrific atrocities, murdering, mutilating, and enslaving tens of thousands of civilians. While DeBeers claimed they didn't buy directly from these rebels, their no questions asked, global monopoly made it the perfect laundry machine for blood-stained stones. Even the Kimberley process, established in 2003 to stop the trade, is often criticized by human rights groups as a paper shield that is easily bypassed by smugglers. Perhaps the most incredible part of the DeBeers story is that for over 50 years, one of the most famous companies in the world was effectively a fugitive from justice. From the 1940s until 2004, DeBeers executives couldn't step foot on American soil. If they did, they risked immediate arrest. Department of Justice had filed multiple antitrust and price-fixing charges against them, but because DeBeers had no assets in the U.S., they simply ignored the American legal system. The standoff only ended in 2004 when the company finally pleaded guilty to price-fixing. The penalty? $10 million fine. For a company that had controlled a multi-billion-dollar global market for half a century, that wasn't a punishment, it was a rounding error. For over 100 years, the DeBeers monopoly was the most successful business model in history. But nothing built by man lasts forever. By the late 1990s, the golden cage was rusting, and the world's diamond producers were ready to break out. The first crack appeared in the outback of Australia. The Argyle mine, the largest diamond producer on the planet by volume, did something unthinkable. They walked away. In 1996, they realized they didn't need a middleman in London to tell them what their stones were worth. They tore up their contract with the CSO and began selling directly to the market. It was the first domino to fall. Soon, the map of the diamond world began to change. Then came Canada. New mines in the Northwest Territories began operating completely independently. Russia's Alrosa, sitting on Siberia's vast fields, grew increasingly assertive and began selling outside DeBeers channels. By the year 2000, the single channel was dead. But it wasn't just competition, it was the blood diamond scandal. For decades, DeBeers had been the world's diamond vacuum cleaner, sucking up every stone on Earth to control the price. But now, that model was a liability. If they bought everything, they were buying conflict, war, and blood. To save their reputation, DeBeers did something radical. They stopped being the regulator. They abandoned the old model of buying up everyone else's supply and retreated to only selling what they mined themselves. The collapse was breathtakingly fast. 1980s, DeBeers controlled 90% of the world's rough diamonds. By 2019, that number had plummeted to just 29.5%. In less than 2 decades, the company that once held the world's most desired commodity in a literal stranglehold had been reduced to a minority player. The CSO, the feared syndicate, was rebranded and restructured. DeBeers was no longer a shadow government. They were just another luxury brand trying to survive in a world that was finally starting to look behind the curtain. Today, DeBeers faces an existential threat that neither Cecil Rhodes nor the Oppenheimers could have ever imagined. It's not a rival mining company, and it's not a rebellious nation. It's a machine in a lab. Lab-grown diamonds. For a century, DeBeers sold the world on the idea that diamonds were precious because they were finite, forged in the Earth's mantle over billions of years. But today, we can do in a few weeks what the Earth took an eon to accomplish. Lab-grown diamonds are not fakes. They are chemically, physically, and optically identical to mined diamonds. Even a seasoned gemologist can't tell the difference without specialized, high-tech equipment. But the real killer isn't the chemistry. It's the price. In 2018, a lab-grown diamond was a slightly cheaper alternative, about 10% off. By 2025, the floor fell out. Lab-grown diamonds became 90% cheaper than mined stones. A diamond that DeBeers tries to sell you $5,000 can now be grown in a reactor for $500. For the first time in history, the scarcity that DeBeers spent a century engineering has been permanently deleted by technology. The impact has been nothing short of a bloodbath. In 2025, DeBeers was left holding a staggering $2 billion unsold inventory. The vacuum cleaner is backed up. The new generation of consumers, Gen Z, is looking at the diamond mythology with a skeptical eye. They see the ethical baggage of mining, they see the artificial price tags, and they are choosing the lab. They aren't buying the forever anymore. They're buying the logical. In 2024, the parent company Anglo-American, the giant that has stood behind DeBeers for decades, announced it was moving to divest the company. They are looking to get out. The empire that began with a sickly teenager on a dusty South African farm is being dismantled. The long con might finally be reaching its expiration date. Because in a world where we can grow forever in a laboratory, a diamond is no longer a miracle. It's just a rock.